Would you believe me if I told you that a janitor quietly built an $8 million fortune by investing in stocks over his lifetime? Ronald understood what most of us don't: the power of investing small amounts of money into the stock market consistently. I'd recommend taking notes, as the next 20-ish minutes are going to be packed with information and value that I spent hundreds of hours and years of trading the markets and investing to learn. We're going to cover everything you need to know to make your first investment from zero knowledge, and this is a guide that I wish I had when I was 18. This is a pretty big topic by itself, so I'm going to keep it brief. Everything we do costs money, and companies sell what we need for a profit, and this is where investing comes into the picture. So investors will put their money into cash-generating businesses by buying shares in profitable companies. Think about it. If you want to grow wealth, what makes the most sense? Owning some of the supermarket that you buy food from every day, or leaving your money under a mattress? If you own a portion of the supermarket, you're basically making money every single time someone goes into the store. Without investing and owning some of that supermarket, it's like going there without your loyalty card. You just spend money, but you get nothing in return. And apart from investing being a great option to grow your wealth, it also protects your money from the most evil force known to humankind:
inflation.
So inflation is why your last trip to the supermarket probably cost you about 75 grand for a loaf of bread. According to the IMF, global inflation has been around 5% annually for the past 50 years. So £100 today is only going to buy you £46 worth of shopping in 15 years. So if you're planning on saving for future life, just know that it's completely pointless. And this brings us onto the banking system, because they have a huge role in why the majority of people don't beat inflation every year. So banks are a business. They exist to enrich themselves and their investors. They don't exist to make you rich. Instead of your money sitting in a bank account, it gets loaned and invested for huge profits. And just like our friend Oliver Twist, you get a tiny percentage of that money back in the form of interest, while they are making an absolute killing. Even in the best case scenario, the interest given to you by banks will never beat inflation, and they know this. It's why you stay poor and why the banks keep on getting richer. But this is actually where you have an advantage. By having a bank account, it means you are already an investor in the markets. So why not take control of your investing and earn a much higher return? Over its lifetime, the stock market has typically grown between 7 and 10% per year. You may be thinking,
well, that sounds pretty low. I'm trying to get rich here.
But think about this. Despite the price of Bitcoin rising from £150 in 2015 all the way up to £51,000 in 2022, 75% of people who bought Bitcoin still lost money. I'm not knocking Bitcoin because I do own some myself, but what it shows is that people bought Bitcoin with the wrong mentality. Because they were trying to get rich quickly, they probably invested money that they couldn't afford to lose, so they panicked whenever prices went down and sold their Bitcoin at a loss. Now, this mentality is nothing new when it comes to human beings and money, and people have been trying to get rich quickly ever since the Dutch tulip mania in the 1630s. Back then, people had never seen a tulip before. It was the hottest thing, and prices exploded. Tulips became so expensive and so in demand that people even offered acres of land just to buy a single tulip bulb. It's absolutely insane. Obviously, this was mad, and it couldn't last. So when the public finally came to their senses, just a lot of people were completely ruined. So the takeaway from this is that in 800-900 years, there is no shortcut to getting rich. The only way you're going to get rich quickly is if you're born into a wealthy family, in which case, congratulations to you. Or if you put in the time, effort, and work to run a successful business. And that's not getting rich quickly, that's a long time and a lot of bloody work and dedication. I know, I have been there. So even though a market return of 10% means most of us are not going to get rich overnight, we can still get rich over time thanks to compound interest. So compound interest means you earn money on the money that you make. If you had an apple and your apple doubled every day, on day 1 you'd have 1 apple. On day 2 you'd have 2 apples. On day 3 you'd have 4 apples, and so on and so on and so on. So I want you to look at that ridiculously steep line at the end of the graph. That's what happens to your money when you invest £25 per week for 40 years. The longer you leave your money invested and the more you're able to invest, the more you benefit from the compound effect over time. And the result is a portfolio that looks like this. And that is how a janitor built an $8 million fortune. It's why we invest consistently and why we invest for life. And for the younger investors, I'm really passionate about this because I wish someone had told me this when I was that age. It's why you should invest with whatever you have as soon as possible. Yes, it's true. Markets do crash. I've seen plenty of market crashes in my life, and I've invested through a pandemic, but I'm still standing. And you know why? It's because I don't go all in, and I don't make stupid emotional decisions with my money. So you remember the Bitcoin example I gave you before? Well, right here is when I first started buying Bitcoin. So I wanted to buy Bitcoin in the years before, but I hadn't started trading, I hadn't started investing, and I hadn't taken any risk with my money. I just worked a normal 9 to 5. So I thought the price was way too high and I just didn't want to risk it. However, price went way beyond what I thought was too high, and I was like, oh, if Bitcoin is now worth like 30, 40 grand, I probably just need to bite the bullet and just start buying. Literally the day after I bought Bitcoin, it started going down from £47,000 all the way down to 13,000. But I didn't panic because by then I'd had a bit of investing experience and I'd also had experience in trading. I also didn't invest my life savings, so I literally just sat there and waited. Every single penny that Bitcoin went down was just a win-win for me. So I slowly bought into the dip, as they call it, and I really doubled down when prices stabilized around the £13,000 mark. Today the prices are back up to around 46,000 again, and I'm still holding my Bitcoin because I only put a little bit of money in, and I'm very, very happy to take the risk and just see what happens over the next decades. I don't think it's hit its ceiling, not in terms of value, but in terms of use in the economy. So what's the lesson? It's not to YOLO your house on the next Bitcoin crash. It's that recessions and market crashes are an opportunity for you to buy. They're a fire sale on assets. Nearly 50% of the global market return between 1990 and 2018 was made on the top 10 trading days. And these were when market crashes happened. So if you actually want to know a bit more about this and how you can incorporate it into your investing once you've got the basics down, I do have a video right here that you should check out. We're not trying to be traders, but once you understand the opportunities that recessions present, you won't be afraid of them, and there's no reason why you can't incorporate them into your investing plan. That way you're not just making emotional decisions, you've actually thought it out in advance, right? But to be able to take advantage of a recession and take advantage of investing in the economy, you do need to make sure you have a stable financial base in place. Otherwise, you can't think long term. And this brings us on to step 2. If you had to build a house that would stand 1,000 years, which piece of land would you choose? It goes without saying, right? You're going to choose a solid piece of ground. If you build a house on the edge of a cliff, good luck to you. The same concept is why you need to build emergency savings, so you can support yourself when times are tough. So 3 to 6 months of living expenses is a typical figure you're going to see floating around. But if you feel like you need more than this to feel secure, by all means build up a bigger emergency fund than that. Just remember, it is for emergencies, like if a roof of your house collapsed or if you lost your job. Without an emergency fund, your investing is definitely going to be less consistent, and that's going to hurt you over the long runs, and you're just not protected if anything goes wrong in your life. A budget is what allows you to meet your aims and invest sustainably. The goal here is to work out how much spare income you actually have left after you've paid for your essential costs like food, rent, travel, and bills. Whatever you have is what you use for investing and going out and having fun and just living your life. How much of that money you allocate to those two things is just going to come down to preference. In my case, I have literally sacrificed to the point of utter misery when I was in grind mode. We're talking work, eat, sleep, invest, repeat for like a couple of years. Other people want to have a bit more fun and they maybe don't want to be as aggressive up front, so it's entirely what you're comfortable with. A word of advice, the more you can invest now, the better it's going to be in the long run. So I personally treat my investing like a backup plan. If I fail at everything else in my life, I should still have a decent amount of money to enjoy my life with, but I'm not trying to just live for when I'm 65. So if you're on a budget, I would say at least invest £25 a week to start with. Instead of talking at you, I'm going to explain this step with a corny little story. Imagine you're Pablo. Pablo is 25, works a full-time job, and invests in his spare time. He doesn't want to study the charts, so he decides to buy £25 of Amazon stock every Wednesday. After 40 years, Pablo is 65 and probably has some lower back pain. He's invested a total of £48,000 in Amazon, which has grown by 8% each year, meaning his shares are now worth £350,000. Now Pablo has enough to fix his lower back pain and fuel a later life crisis that has his wife really concerned. So Pablo is an example of a passive investor using a dollar cost average buying strategy. Simply put, a passive investor buys and holds stocks for a long time and benefits from the market average growth of around 7 to 10% per year. Active investors, on the other hand, take more risks. They try to time the market and benefit from short-term price movements. When you consider that 90% of actively managed funds fail to beat the S&P 500 over the long run, as a beginner investor, passive investing is hands down the way to go. And because we take a long-term view with our investing, by dollar cost averaging, which is investing the same amount every day, month, week, year, whatever you want to do, you remove all of that confusion that comes with making buying decisions, which is what trips people up in the markets. But there's a problem here. You're not going to invest in a single stock like Pablo. You're going to spread your money across hundreds of companies that represent entire economies. This is where index funds come into the picture. So an index fund is really simple. It's a collection of individual stocks that are bundled together and then sold as a single asset. This makes investing in index funds far less risky than a single stock. Take the S&P 500 for example. If one company fails, it's really not a big deal because there are 499 other companies in the index that are going to continue making it more valuable over time. And this is what we call diversification, because your risk is spread over more than one asset. And what's even better is any underperforming companies are kicked out of the index. So it's literally a never-ending cycle that only features the best businesses. A lot of beginners start investing with the S&P 500. Other options include the Nasdaq 100, which is the 100 top US tech stocks, and global funds, which is like the S&P 500 but for the entire world. A lot of brokers, which is where you go to buy shares and other financial assets, offer these kind of funds, and it's why I recommend that you look at the funds you want to buy before you register with a broker. That way you can compare which broker gives you the best deals, and you're also not going to be put in a situation where you register with a broker, then find out you want to invest in something later, and it's like, oh, well, they don't bloody have it. Great. And as you could probably tell from my tone, I did that. So when you're comparing funds, you want to find the lowest fees with the highest return. Some of the best funds available for the S&P 500 and global shares are on screen. Also, when you're researching these funds, take a note of what their historical return is. You can then enter it into a compound calculator and get like super excited about how much money they might make over time. Other thing that you need to consider is all of this is based on historical data. So there's no guarantee that you're going to get the exact results in the future. You could end up with nothing.
Oh Lord.
I mean, I'll be honest, unless Western civilization collapses, that's probably not going to happen. But still, just have that in mind. So now that you understand what you want to buy, it's nearly time to start looking at brokers. But before that, let's take a look at the tax-free investing options that are available to you. So I'm based in the UK, I invest in the UK, so I'm mainly going to cover the UK options, but there are some US options available as well. So thanks to the ISA account in the UK, you can invest up to £20,000 a year tax-free. And for those who are wondering, yes, all of the money that you make will be completely tax-free as long as it is held inside of an ISA. And if you're in the UK, that's the account that you're going to open to start your investing journey. In the US, I believe the equivalent is a Roth IRA. I'm not a tax advisor, nor am I a financial advisor, so just make sure you check for your territory what options are available to you. But there is actually an even more powerful investing option if you're in the UK, and it's called a SIPP, which is short for a self-invested pension plan. So a SIPP is very similar to an ISA in that you can own stocks, bonds, and all that good stuff inside of it. But what's great about a SIPP is that for every £1 you invest into the account, the government's going to top it up with an extra 20%. So you're literally getting free money that you can also invest in the markets. There are more rules with a SIPP compared to an ISA, particularly when it comes to making withdrawals, and if you withdraw before you hit retirement age, you do have to pay some money back in taxes. So for anyone who's worried about relying on stocks or investment funds for their later life, if you have a workplace pension, it's literally invested in many of the same assets. When you start to look into all of this stuff, you realize there's only a few ways that money seems to be invested in this economy. I personally am invested in both a SIPP and an ISA account, and the free government money really does make a massive difference in the speed that your investments will grow. I'd always recommend choosing a broker with the lowest fees. I mean, why do you want to give your money away to a broker? The whole point is to make money for yourself, right? There are literally thousands of brokers, so I'm going to give you a brief overview of 5 that are available in the UK. Hargreaves Lansdown is one of the biggest brokers in the UK. They have a lot of high net worth clients and they have thousands of funds to choose from, but they're bloody expensive. Vanguard have a great reputation in the investing world, and its founder created the very first index fund which tracked the S&P 500. The issue is you can only buy Vanguard funds with them, and it's also more expensive to buy their funds directly from them compared to competitors, which really doesn't make much sense. Fidelity is another well-known name in the investing industry. I started investing with Fidelity and I still have my SIPP and my main ISA with them. A lot of their funds are very low fees with no transaction cost. They're not great if you're looking to buy US assets like the Nasdaq because they have ridiculously high foreign transaction fees. ETFs also incur a £7.50 online deal fee with them, which really limits your options again if you're investing on a budget, and there's no need to pay this when you can do this for free with many other brokers. Trading 212 are probably one of the best options for a new investor. They have no fees, and compared to other brokers on the list, their 0.15% foreign exchange fee is really reasonable. I would have opened a second ISA account with them this year, but as I was researching this video, I was reminded how irritating their back end can be. What? I can't even see a preview of the fund's performance. Like, I have to click on the key information document for every single bloody fund. Man, and they also don't offer a major benefit, which the next broker I'm going to mention does. InvestEngine are a fund-only broker with no foreign exchange fees and no transaction fees. And that's why I opened a second ISA with InvestEngine instead of Trading 212 this year. They have a lot less funds available compared to the other brokers on this list, but if you're just starting out and you want to invest in all the popular assets, they've got you more than covered. The free foreign exchange fees really make them a great choice if you're looking to invest in things like the Nasdaq. Besides having the right funds and low transaction fees, you also need to consider the charges that are going to come with having an account. Read this information carefully when you check out the broker. It will be on like their fees and charges or their terms of doing service page, because it will have massive implications on what your actual net return is going to be over time. There's also going to be some investing jargon that's just unnecessary and confusing. I've got a cheat sheet in the description below and it explains everything you're going to come across in there. This step is super simple. Once you've chosen your broker, you're going to have to register with them and open an account. You're also going to have to submit like proof of ID, which is going to be passport or your driver's license pictures and proof of address. Make sure that you open up an ISA account and not the standard investing account, because if you put money in the investment account and start buying things, you will have to pay tax. It'll take a few days for them to verify your identity, but once this is done, you're all set to start investing. Okay, so before you can buy anything, you need to transfer money into your ISA account from a bank account. You can normally do this within the broker as if you're paying for something online with your card details. From there, buying funds is literally no different to just making a purchase on Amazon, and I'm going to go through that with you using Fidelity right now. So from here, I want to say a massive congratulations. You've made your first investment, and it's a massive step in your psychology regarding money. I would honestly recommend note the little date down, even what you bought, and it's just a nice thing to look back on because you're going to go a long way through your investing journey. It could even lead to you investing in other things throughout your lifetime, and you're going to know it all started with you making that first purchase. So I'm not being patronizing. Honestly, give yourself a little pat on the back, and your money is now working for you when you sleep. All that's left from here is step 10, which is you're going to buy your chosen fund or funds every week until you stop investing. Many brokers also offer an automated investing plan, and I definitely recommend setting this up if you know when your income is coming in every month. All this means is regular payments are going to go into your bank and they get automatically invested. So if you're somebody that kind of struggles with discipline when you get money, I talk to a lot of people who've asked me about this and they've said, oh, I'd love to start, but as soon as I get paid, I just buy stuff. So you can eliminate that problem. As soon as you get paid, money into your investment account, done. It's taken care of, you're not thinking about it, you know you've invested, and you can just spend the rest of your money on whatever the hell you want, to be honest with you. So once you've got a bit of confidence under your belt investing, the next thing you should definitely do is start diversifying your portfolio. So to start with, this is going to be branching out into other ETFs. So if you've invested in the US economy, invest in Europe. If you've invested in Europe and the US, invest in the global market. If you've invested in the global market, maybe invest in some of these smaller economies, etc., etc. Bonds and dividend stocks are also a good thing to invest in if you want some passive income, and assets like gold will act as a safety net if the economy goes south. So another word of caution is only invest in new assets once you trust and understand them. Every decision that you make in investing should match your vision of the future. So you always have to have that in mind. I am buying XYZ because I believe in 30-40 years time, XYZ is still going to be relevant and therefore will grow in value over time. So without going too much into market analysis, things like gold is something you'd maybe want to just slowly accumulate over time, and there are things you can look at and judge in the economy which are good times to buy. In general, if the economy is doing very well, it's called a risk-on environment, which means people aren't holding their money, they're not putting their money into super safe assets because they're worried about things, they're being a bit more frugal. So typically they're not going to be buying gold and the price will go down a bit. That's your time to buy. When times are tough, then you'll have what is called a risk-off environment. So people are going to start buying all of these safety assets because they're worried about stocks and other things. So then you'll see the price of gold going up. The more you kind of learn about investing and the more you learn about how different parts of the market interplay, you start to piece these things together and you can start to have a very solid game plan of how you're going to react to certain things in our economy. If you want to learn about how you can take your passive investing returns to the next level, you should definitely watch this video next. Until the next one, plan your investments and invest your plan.